The sun rose over a young America, casting long shadows of doubt and uncertainty. The year was 1861, and the nation was on the brink. A house divided against itself, the United States found its very foundation cracking under the immense weight of its contradictions. For decades, the North and South had grappled with fundamental differences, their destinies seemingly on a collision course. At the heart of the storm was slavery, a moral abomination that cast a dark pall over the nation's soul. Southern states clung tightly to the institution, viewing it as essential to their way of life, their economy, their very identity. The North, on the other hand, increasingly viewed slavery with moral disgust, a stain on the ideals of liberty and equality upon which the nation was founded. This fundamental clash of values, of right and wrong, ignited a firestorm of debate that raged across the land. Beyond the moral quagmire of slavery, other fault lines threatened to split the nation in two. The issue of states' rights versus federal authority emerged as a lightning rod for conflict. Southern states, fearing Northern encroachment on their autonomy, held fast to the belief that individual states held ultimate power. The North, however, envisioned a stronger federal government, one capable of uniting the nation under a common purpose. Fueling these tensions were stark economic disparities between the industrial North and the agrarian South. The North's factories and mills hummed with activity, fueled by a wage-based labor force, while the South relied heavily on enslaved labor to sustain its vast agricultural plantations. These economic engines, so different in nature, created opposing interests and fueled resentment on both sides. As the nation wrestled with these seemingly insurmountable differences, events began to spiral out of control. The first shot fired at Fort Sumter on that fateful April morning tore a hole through the fragile fabric of a nation. The storm of war had arrived, its fury unleashed upon the Union's doorstep. The bombardment of Fort Sumter was a symbolic act of defiance. Confederate forces under General Beauregard rained down relentless artillery fire. Inside, Union soldiers, commanded by Major Anderson, fought back with tenacity. For 34 hours, the sky above Charleston Harbor was ablaze with cannon fire. The fall of Fort Sumter shattered any remaining illusions of a peaceful resolution. The nation, now irrevocably divided, braced for a conflict of unimaginable scale. In the North, President Abraham Lincoln issued a call to arms, urging citizens to defend the Union. Volunteers, their hearts filled with patriotic fervor, flocked to enlist, transforming sleepy towns and bustling cities into hives of military preparation. From the fields and factories of the North, a massive army began to take shape, its ranks swelling with each passing day. Farmers and shopkeepers, teachers and laborers all answered the call, laying down their plows and tools to take up arms in defense of their nation. First blood in the fields. The Battle of Bull Run. The first major clash of arms came in the summer of 1861, near the small town of Manassas Junction, Virginia. The Battle of Bull Run, as it would become known, pitted two untested armies against each other in a brutal contest of will and firepower. Union forces, under the command of General Irvin McDowell, marched south with high hopes of crushing the rebellion and capturing the Confederate capital at Richmond. Confederate troops, commanded by Generals Beauregard and Joseph E. Johnston, awaited their arrival, their lines arrayed along the banks of Bull Run Creek. Bloodshed in the West, Shiloh and the Mississippi. While the eastern theater of the war captured headlines with battles fought in the shadow of the nation's capital, a different kind of conflict raged in the West. Here, amidst the rolling hills and winding rivers, the Union Army sought to gain control of the vital waterways that served as arteries of commerce and transportation for the Confederacy. The Mississippi River, in particular, held immense strategic importance, its broad waters dividing the Confederacy in two. In the spring of 1862, Union forces under the command of General Ulysses S. Grant embarked on a daring campaign to capture the key Confederate stronghold of Corinth, Mississippi. Grant, a tenacious and resourceful commander, recognized the importance of controlling the railroads that converged at Corinth, a vital hub for Confederate supplies and reinforcements. A turning tide in Maryland. The Battle of Antietam. As the summer of 1862 wore on, the tide of war seemed to be turning in favor of the Confederacy. Confederate General Robert E. Lee, emboldened by a string of victories in the East, launched a daring invasion of Maryland, hoping to carry the war into the heart of the Union. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia, weary but confident, crossed the Potomac River, their spirits high as they marched through the rolling farmland of western Maryland. President Lincoln, sensing an opportunity to deliver a crushing blow to the Confederacy, turned to General George B. McClellan to lead the Union Army against Lee. McClellan, a brilliant organizer but a cautious commander, moved slowly, his army trailing Lee's forces like a reluctant shadow. Despite the horrific losses at Antietam, the war dragged on, its relentless grip tightening on the nation. In the summer of 1863, the armies of North and South collided once more, this time at the small town of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. The Battle of Gettysburg, a 3-day epic of courage and sacrifice, would prove to be the bloodiest battle of the war and a turning point in the conflict. General Lee, his army battered but still defiant, sought to win a decisive victory on Northern soil, hoping to break the Union's will to fight. He faced a formidable opponent in General George Meade, who had recently taken command of the Army of the Potomac. Meade, a steady and resolute commander, deployed his forces skillfully, utilizing the high ground surrounding Gettysburg to his advantage. The battle began on July 1, 1863, as Confederate forces clashed with Union cavalry units north of the town. As the smoke cleared from the battlefields of Antietam and Gettysburg, a new chapter unfolded in the American Civil War. The conflict, initially framed as a struggle to preserve the Union, took on a profound moral dimension with the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation. President Abraham Lincoln, a leader of unwavering conviction and compassion, recognized that the war could not be won solely on the battlefield. The very soul of the nation was at stake, and the scourge of slavery, that stain on the American conscience, had to be addressed. On January 1, 1863, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, a document that would forever alter the course of American history. The crucible of war often forges remarkable leaders, individuals thrust into extraordinary circumstances who rise to meet the challenges of their time. The American Civil War was no exception, producing a pantheon of military and political figures whose names would forever be etched in the annals of history. At the helm of the Union cause stood Abraham Lincoln, a president of uncommon wisdom and resolve. Lincoln, a man of humble origins who rose to become the nation's chief executive, navigated the treacherous currents of war with a steady hand. As the Civil War entered its third year, the conflict evolved into a grueling war of attrition, a relentless test of endurance and sacrifice that left an indelible mark on the nation. Gone were the early illusions of quick victories and glorious charges. The reality of war, brutal and unforgiving, settled over the land like a shroud, its icy grip tightening with each passing season. Battlefields, once serene landscapes of rolling hills and tranquil forests, transformed into scenes of unimaginable carnage. The air, thick with smoke and the stench of gunpowder and decay, bore witness to the horrors unfolding below. The early years of the Civil War painted a picture of Confederate resilience, their victories a testament to tactical brilliance and the fierce determination of their soldiers. The South, though outnumbered and outgunned, had managed to hold the industrial North at bay, their early successes fueling a belief that the Confederacy might indeed prevail. However, the tide began to turn as the Union, under the resolute leadership of Abraham Lincoln and the strategic acumen of Ulysses S. Grant, harnessed its vast resources and manpower. The fall of Vicksburg in July 1863, a strategic victory of immense importance, gave the Union control of the Mississippi River, effectively splitting the Confederacy in two. The relentless grind of war exacted a heavy toll, not only on the battlefields where men clashed in brutal hand-to-hand combat, but also on the home front, where families and communities grappled with the conflict's far-reaching consequences. Soldiers, North and South, endured unimaginable hardships, their lives reduced to a cycle of marches, battles, and the ever-present threat of disease and death. They fought in sweltering heat and bitter cold, their uniforms often tattered and torn, their bodies weary from constant movement and lack of proper nourishment. Beyond the battlefield, politics, society, and the shadow of conflict. The Civil War was not merely a clash of armies on distant battlefields. It was a conflict that raged at the very heart of American society, testing the nation's political institutions and exposing deep social and economic divisions. In the North, the war effort spurred industrial growth and innovation, but it also fueled social tensions and political dissent. The draft, instituted to meet the demands of a protracted war, sparked protests and riots, highlighting the deep divisions within Northern society over the war's aims and conduct. The dawn of a new era, the end of the war, and the promise of Reconstruction. As the calendar turned to 1865, the once mighty Confederacy lay battered and broken, its armies shattered, its resources exhausted. The South's dream of independence, once a beacon of hope for a proud people, had dwindled to a flicker in the wind, extinguished by the relentless pressure of the Union war machine and the unwavering determination of its people. The end came not in a blaze of glory, but in a series of surrenders, each one a bitter pill for a nation accustomed to victory on the battlefield. The unfinished struggle legacies of the Civil War and the enduring quest for civil rights. The end of the Civil War marked a turning point in American history, but it did not erase the deep divisions that had fueled the conflict. The task of rebuilding a shattered nation, of reconciling former enemies and forging a new path forward, proved to be a daunting challenge, one that would test the nation's resolve for generations to come. Reconstruction, the tumultuous period that followed the war, aimed to reintegrate the South into the Union and secure civil rights for freed slaves. It was a noble endeavor, fraught with political complexities and social resistance, a stark reminder that the end of slavery did not guarantee equality or erase the legacy of racial prejudice. The enduring legacy of the Civil War. The American Civil War claimed over 600,000 lives, a stark reminder of the fragility of unity and human resilience. It was a conflict born of irreconcilable differences, tearing at the fabric of American society. From the ashes emerged a nation transformed, its identity forged anew. The Union, preserved through sacrifices, stood as a testament to democratic ideals. The abolition of slavery marked a turning point, a beacon of hope for millions. But the scars of war ran deep, leaving an indelible mark on the American psyche.